किसी व्यक्ति के निर्माण का स्वर्णिम समय यौवन काल होता है, जिसमें वह आने वाले लंबे जीवन के लिए शरीर, मन और आत्मा का निर्माण और विकास करता है। इसी नींव पर अपने जीवन का मजबूत भवन खड़ा करता है और उसका भोग करता है। किसी भी राष्ट्र के विकास की आधारशिला और ऊर्जा उसकी युवा शक्ति ही होती है। यही उसका आत्मबल और इच्छा शक्ति भी होती है। इसीलिए कहा गया है, वीर भोग्य वसुंधरा। राष्ट्र निर्माण के ताने बाने में यौवन के ही धागे होते हैं। अतः जो राष्ट्र अपनी इस ऊर्जा का संरक्षण और संवर्धन करता है, वह विकास के उच्च शिखर पर पहुंचता है। राष्ट्र के कृषि, उद्योग, शिक्षा, चिकित्सा, तकनीक, राजनीति रूपी चक्के को यही युवा शक्ति, ऊर्जा व गति प्रदान करती है। यह राष्ट्र की रगों में बहने वाला गर्म खून है, जो उसे चैतन्य और प्रगतिशील बनाता है। भौतिक व आध्यात्मिक दोनों के विकास में इसी ऊष्मा का तप सक्रिय रहता है। इतिहास साक्षी रहा है कि जब किसी राष्ट्र की धुरी लड़खड़ाई है, युवा शक्ति ने आगे आकर अपने पुरुषार्थ से उसे सुदृढ़ बनाया है। आज अनेक प्रकार की समस्याएं जैसे नशा, फैशन परस्ती, पाश्चात्य जीवन शैली, आस्था संकट, भ्रष्टाचार, बेरोजगारी देश की युवा शक्ति पर आरूढ़ हैं। आज युवा शक्ति को आत्मबोध एवं अपने सांस्कृतिक गौरव से परिचित कराना समय की मांग है। वर्ष 2011 की जनगणना के अनुसार हमारे देश में 35 वर्ष तक की उम्र की 65% आबादी है। यह युवा शक्ति जिधर चल पड़ेगी, देश भी उधर ही चल पड़ेगा। अतः देश का भविष्य अब युवाओं के हाथ में है। यह युवा शक्ति ही राष्ट्र शक्ति बनकर राष्ट्र को समृद्धि, उन्नति एवं प्रगति के मार्ग पर ले जाएगी। युग ऋषि पंडित श्री राम शर्मा आचार्य जी ने युवा की अद्भुत परिभाषा दी है। युवा वो है असंभव जिसके शब्दकोश में नहीं, जो बाधाओं को चीर कर अपना मार्ग बनाता है, जो परिस्थितियों का दास नहीं, उनका निर्माता, नियंत्रणकर्ता एवं स्वामी है, जो भाग्य नहीं, अपने कर्म पर विश्वास रखता है, जो उमंग, उत्साह, जोश से जीता व सुनहरे भविष्य के सपने देखता है, जो स्वयं सब कुछ करके गौरव अनुभव करता है और विश्व में कुछ अनूठा करना चाहता है।
असमंजस व अवसाद की स्थिति से गुजर रही युवा पीढ़ी को दिशा देने का काम एक चिंतक ही कर सकता है।
नमस्कार।
वर्ष 2006 में देव संस्कृति विश्वविद्यालय के दीक्षांत समारोह में पूर्व राष्ट्रपति डॉक्टर एपीजे अब्दुल कलाम व श्रद्धेय डॉक्टर प्रणव पंड्या जी, जो विश्वविद्यालय के कुलपति भी हैं, मिले और इन दोनों चिंतकों ने मंथन किया कि युवा पीढ़ी को एक सृजनात्मक मंच देने की आवश्यकता है जो राष्ट्र निर्माण में सहायक हो। यहीं से दिया की नींव रखी गई।
I am indeed delighted to participate in the second convocation of Dev Sanskriti Vishwavidyalaya. I am very happy that this institution has been created with a motto of developing the divine culture, which is of utmost importance to us while we are on the path of transforming India into a prosperous, happy and peaceful society. We have the responsibility of transforming India into a developed nation before the year 2020. It is an endless journey through knowledge and enlightenment. Such a journey opens up new vistas of development or humanism, where there is no scope nor room for pettiness, disharmony, jealousy and hatred or enmity. It transforms a human being into a wholesome whole, a noble soul and an asset to the universe. God bless you.
जिस तरह एक दिया अंधकार को दूर करने की क्षमता रखता है, दिया भी इस देश के युवा मन से अंधेरे को दूर करने का स्वप्न लेकर चला है। ये प्रशिक्षण और कार्यशालाओं के माध्यम से शिक्षित, स्वस्थ, आत्मनिर्भर, विनम्र, संवेदनशील दिव्य युवाओं को तैयार करने के लिए प्रयासरत है, जिससे राष्ट्र निर्माण की रचनात्मक गतिविधियां चलाई जा सकें, दिव्य भारत का पुनर्निर्माण हो। इसका लक्ष्य युवाओं की क्षमताओं का विकास कर दिव्य भारत का निर्माण करना है, जिसमें व्यक्ति, परिवार व समाज का उत्थान हो। दिया युवाओं के सपनों में आदर्शवाद लाकर उनकी वैचारिक प्रक्रिया में सकारात्मक बदलाव लाने के लिए प्रयासरत है। वैज्ञानिक अध्यात्म के माध्यम से युवाओं में देवत्व की अभिव्यक्ति, दुनिया में सद्भाव के साथ सतयुग की वापसी इसका परम उद्देश्य है। इस तथ्य की महत्वता समझते हुए वो डॉक्टर कलाम के भारतवर्ष को वर्ष 2020 तक एक समृद्ध राष्ट्र बनाने के स्वप्न की ओर युवा शक्ति को अग्रसर करने के लिए दिया इस महान राष्ट्र के युवाओं के लिए एक आंदोलन है जो मजबूत सिद्धांतों और यथार्थवादी लक्ष्यों पर आधारित है। जो लोग दिल और दिमाग से युवा हैं एवं जो एक नए भारत की परिकल्पना के हमारे स्वप्न से सहमत हैं, उम्र, जाति या धर्म की परवाह किए बगैर हमसे जुड़े।
मुझे विश्वास है गायत्री परिवार के दिया आंदोलन के माध्यम से देश के युवाओं में वो संवेदनाएं प्रकट होगी, सामाजिक जिम्मेवारियां प्रकट होगी, एक साहस की वृत्ति पैदा होगी, कुछ करने के लिए, कुछ कर करके दिखाने के लिए जीवन को लगाने की इच्छा होगी। देश के लिए जीना सीखो, इस मंत्र के साथ
इस आंदोलन से जुड़कर आपके जीवन में खुशी एवं एक नए उत्साह का संचार होगा। साथ ही अपने राष्ट्र को नई ऊंचाइयों तक ले जाने में आप गौरवान्वित महसूस करेंगे।
प्रणाम दीदी, स्निग्धा दीदी, आपका आवाज नहीं आ रहा है। कैन यू जस्ट चेक प्लीज? सॉरी अबाउट दिस।
Can you hear me, भैया?
यस यस, वी कैन हियर यू लाउड एंड क्लियर। थैंक यू। ओवर टू यू।
ओके, सभी को प्रणाम। मैं स्निग्धा श्रीवास्तव गुप्ता दिया मुंबई की तरफ से आप सभी को जो कि हमारे साथ फेसबुक, यूट्यूब और लिंक्डइन के माध्यम से जुड़े हैं, आप सभी का आज की ज्ञान सभा में स्वागत करती हूँ। इससे पहले कि हम आज के क्रम को आगे बढ़ाएं, आप सभी से नम्र निवेदन है कि आप हमारे साथ एक बार मन ही मन एक छोटी सी प्रेयर बोले। Let us all pray to the supreme power to enlighten our intellect and guide us to the righteous path. Om Bhurbhuvah Swaha Tatsaviturvarenyam Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi Dhiyo Yo Naha Prachodayat. Well, to start with, let me give you a brief introduction of Diya as was shown in the documentary a few minutes back. Divine India Youth Association is the youth wing of All World Gayatri Parivar. It is a group of like-minded people who come from various cross-sections of the society with only one goal, betterment of self and society at large. The major focus of the activities are around man-making, character building, and nation-building activities. Amongst the primary objectives of Diya, protection of environment, creating awareness about de-addiction, reforming education, disaster management, conducting camps and workshops on yoga and stress management, various skill development programs, etc. are at the forefront. I'd also like to quickly share a brief introduction of the platform that we have all joined in today, the Gyansabha series. Well, Gyansabha is one such platform that has been instrumental in bringing together various thought leaders from various fields like science and technology, literature, health, art and culture, sports, education, etc., who've put forward their inspirational thoughts on various aspects. This is the 80th webinar of Gyansabha, and it is indeed a very special one as it is in association with National Thermal Power Corporation of India Limited. This webinar has been organized in view of the ongoing Vigilance Awareness Week, which is observed from October 27th through November 1st, 2021, all throughout the country. Vigilance Awareness Week is observed every year in India during the birth anniversary of Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel. Observance of Vigilance Awareness Week is one of the tools to bring together all stakeholders to collectively participate in the prevention of and to fight against corruption, and to raise public awareness regarding the existence, cause, and the gravity of threats posed by corruption. मैं आप सभी परिजनों को ये बताना चाहूंगी कि अखिल विश्व गायत्री परिवार, जिसका स्वर्ण जयंती वर्ष भी चल रहा है, AWGP की एक बहुत ही महत्वपूर्ण योजना, जिसको हम युग निर्माण योजना के नाम से जानते हैं, इसकी संकल्पना पंडित श्री राम शर्मा आचार्य जी द्वारा मथुरा में आयोजित सन 1958 के गायत्री महायज्ञ के समय की थी। व्यक्ति निर्माण, परिवार निर्माण, समाज निर्माण का लक्ष्य लेकर यह अभियान उन्होंने 1962 में गायत्री तपोभूमि मथुरा में आरंभ किया। स्वस्थ शरीर, स्वच्छ मन एवं सभ्य समाज की रचना का लक्ष्य पूरा करने के लिए दशकों से संचालित यह आंदोलन पूरे संसार में चलाया जा रहा है। नवनिर्माण का यह अभियान समय की एक अत्यंत आवश्यक एवं महत्वपूर्ण पुकार है। व्यक्ति के परिवर्तन से ही समाज, विश्व एवं युग का परिवर्तन संभव है। इस धरती पर स्वर्गीय वातावरण का सृजन करने के लिए हर मनुष्य तक पहुंचकर बदलाव लाने की कोशिश इस योजना की रही है। और आज हमें यह मौका एनटीपीसी ने दिया है कि हम विजिलेंस अवेयरनेस वीक पर आज की ज्ञान सभा का आयोजन कर रहे हैं। एनटीपीसी से मैं सर्वप्रथम श्री मुनीश जोहरी जी का आभार व्यक्त करना चाहूंगी, एज ऑल्सो अ वेरी स्पेशल थैंक्स टू श्री दिलेर सिंह, HR NTPC, and to Shri Ajay Gupta ji, who is the law of NTPC Western Region. I also extend a very warm welcome and gratitude to all the participants from NTPC Western Region for joining us. I also welcome all the academicians and students from various universities and colleges like Gyansabha College of Engineering, Mumbai, for joining us today. Shri Manish Johari ji has joined us today, who is the Regional Executive Director of NTPC Western Region 1. He studied engineering from Government Engineering College, Jabalpur, and is having a bachelor's degree in electrical engineering. Sir has joined NTPC as an executive trainee in the year 1984 and has a good 37 years of experience in NTPC. He has gained experience in the areas related to electrical erection, maintenance, technical services, project construction, etc. Before joining as the Regional Executive Director of Western Region 1, Sir was also the Business Unit Head of Baruni TPS and Vidyanchal. I would like to now request Shri Manish Johari ji for a welcome address to all our participants today. So. Okay, while we wait for Manish sir, I would also like to inform you all about the Gyansabha documentary, which will be played by our IT team in a few minutes. So, can we please see the documentary?
Yes, we should be playing. A minister is here, so you can see now. So, Sridhar, you want to switch to minister?
Yeah, sure. So, Manish sir, I have just introduced all the guests. I've introduced you to all the guests, and I would request you to please join us for a short welcome address to all the participants today.
Over to you, sir. We can see you, minister.
Yeah, thank you. It's a matter of immense pleasure that the CVC is observing the Vigilance Awareness Week from the 26th of October to November 1. In this awareness program which is being done today, I welcome Mr. Karthikeyan, ex-Director CBI, Mr. Shalesh Gandhi, ex-Information Commissioner, and Ms. Anjali Bhardwaj. The story of any great nation is not just the summation of its achievements, but it is also the challenges and the struggles. Today, as India is on the brink of a great jump in its position as an economic power, the deep-rooted malaise of corruption is perhaps the biggest challenge that we are facing now. The goal of the growth and development that we have set for ourselves cannot be achieved without a system which is fair and transparent. And it requires a robust and independent political and administrative institutions. Corruptions not only impede the efficient governance, but is also a threat to our democratic ideals and moral fabric of our polity. It is because of this reason that punishing individual cases is no longer sufficient, but prevention is the only effective remedy against the malaise of corruption. What is required is a constant and tireless vigilance, not only to cover the actions of those around us, but over ourselves also. Let each and every citizen of this nation take an oath to police himself in thought, word, and action. If we are free as an individual of corruption, then the whole society will automatically become free of corruption. Let each and every citizen of this nation follow this and make our nation and society corruption free. Let us take a pledge on this occasion to remove the menace of corruption from our society. I extend my greetings to all those associated with observance of the Vigilance Awareness Week 2021. Let us reaffirm our commitment to make India corruption free and engage in ceaseless efforts to achieve our goals. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir, for such an inspiring welcome address. I'm sure that we'll all pledge for the same today. And thank you very much for sparing your time for this webinar today from your very busy schedule. Very much thank you, sir. This is our first collaboration with NTPC, and we look forward to strengthening our bond further in the coming years and working for the nation. Well, it is an immense pleasure and a great honor for all of us to have such a great lineup today. The speakers today who have spared some time from their busy schedule will be apprising us in many ways. Our first speaker, without any further ado, is Shri Shalesh Gandhiji, who's the Right to Information activist. Sir is the recipient of prestigious Nani Palkhiwala Civil Liberties Award and the MR Pai Award. He is the Alumnus awardee of IIT Bombay. He has been the former Information Commissioner with the Central Information Commission. He gave many landmark decisions on RTI, apart from organizing the first digital paperless office in the Commission. He was part of the National RTI movement, which was involved in drafting the National Act. He was the convener of the National Campaign for People's Right to Information. He has used RTI and also trained many citizens and government officials in over 1,000+ workshops to use it. Sir has also published a book called RTI Act, Authentic Interpretation of the Statute, and a paper critiquing Supreme Court judgments on RTI. Shri Shailesh ji, we extend a very warm welcome to you on the platform today and request you to enlighten us with your talk, please.
Opportunity. Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you very much, fellow citizens of India. I'm thankful to Dia for giving this opportunity and for getting us all to focus on vigilance in India and to make India corruption free. This is a very laudable objective और मैं उम्मीद करता हूं कि इसका कहीं फल मिलेगा, नतीजा मिलेगा. मगर हम ये एक बार सोच लें कि आज की परिस्थिति क्या है। जब तक हम ईमानदारी से आकलन नहीं करेंगे कि हम कहां पे हैं, तो इंप्रूवमेंट मुश्किल है। कई देशों में, कई जो सुधरे हुए देश हैं, जो थोड़े आगे देश हैं, वहां पे गवर्नमेंट डिपार्टमेंट से विजिलेंस डिपार्टमेंट नहीं होते हैं। अपने देश में करीब करीब सब गवर्नमेंट डिपार्टमेंट्स में विजिलेंस डिपार्टमेंट होते हैं, सतर्कता डिपार्टमेंट होते हैं, मगर वो ठीक से काम नहीं करते। इसके लिए हमने एंटी करप्शन ब्यूरो लगा दिया, वो भी ठीक से कुछ नहीं रोक पाते, तो हमने सेंट्रल ब्यूरो ऑफ इन्वेस्टिगेशन सीबीआई की रचना कर ली। फिर कहा वो भी नहीं ठीक है, तो सेंट्रल विजिलेंस कमीशन लगा दिया, उनका भी काम सेटिस्फैक्टरी नहीं है, तो हमने लोकपाल बना दिया। ये लेयर पे लेयर बनाते जाते हैं, मगर करप्शन को कोई असर नहीं हो रहा है। उसकी वजह क्या है? और ये मैं जो आपको बता रहा हूं, ये सिर्फ रोने की बात नहीं है, सिर्फ आलोचना करने की बात नहीं है, सॉल्यूशन ढूंढने की बात है। मगर पहले हम रिकॉग्नाइज करें कहां पे हैं। एक उदाहरण दूंगा आपको, सेंट्रल ब्यूरो ऑफ इन्वेस्टिगेशन सीबीआई की एक कंप्लीट एंटी करप्शन ब्रांच का 1980 से 1984 5 साल के पीरियड में क्या कारोबारी हुई, क्या काम किया और उसका क्या हुआ, इसका स्टडी 2008 में किया गया था। 5 साल का, 25 साल पहले की बात, कि भाई वो पूरे 5 साल में क्या हुआ, क्या अचीव हुआ, क्या फल निकला। उस पीरियड में करीब 264 लोगों पे केस किए गए थे और 144 को कन्विक्शन हुई। ये माना गया है कि उन्होंने गुनाह किया है। मगर उन 144 लोगों को क्या हुआ? सब लोग अपील में गए और 2008 में ये पाया गया कि सिर्फ 4 लोग उनमें से 20 दिन के ऊपर जेल में रहे थे। कुछ मर गए थे, कुछ की केस चल रहे थे, कुछ को 1 दिन की सजा हुई। 4 लोग 5 साल में सेंट्रल ब्यूरो ऑफ इन्वेस्टिगेशन के सब मेहनत के बावजूद सिर्फ 4 लोगों को पनिशमेंट हुई। ये तो मेरे ख्याल से अगर सीबीआई नाम का हम पार्टियां लगा देते तो भी वही होता, कि लगता कि हाँ कुछ है। ये विजिलेंस नहीं है, और इसकी एक मेन वजह है अपनी जुडिशियल सिस्टम जो है, अपनी न्यायिक व्यवस्था में प्रॉब्लम है। तारीख पे तारीख ये बन गया है स्लोगन न्यायिक व्यवस्था का। ये न्यायिक व्यवस्था नहीं, ये अन्यायिक व्यवस्था है। इट्स अ organization of injustice. It's a system of injustice, not of justice. Unless we get justice fast and in time, without delays, we will not be able to curb corruption. This seems to be the truth. तो क्या किया जाए? इसमें से कहां हम जाएं? क्योंकि हर जगह करप्शन आ रही है और करप्शन बढ़ती जा रही है। कानून का भी अगर हम आकलन करें तो हमने देखा है कि प्रिवेंशन ऑफ करप्शन एक्ट के नाम से एक कानून बनाया हमने और उसको फिर अमेंड किया और ये कहा कि अगर सरकारी अफसर करप्शन करता है तो उसके खिलाफ प्रोसिक्यूशन करने के पहले सरकार की परमिशन लेनी पड़ेगी, और वो परमिशन महीनों महीनों नहीं आती है, सालों तक नहीं आती है कई बार। उससे भी अभी संतुष्ट नहीं हुए तो 1-2 साल पहले ऐसा कानून में बदलाव लाया गया कि अगर सरकारी अमलदार पे करप्शन का चार्ज है तो उसको इन्वेस्टिगेट करने को, उसकी जांच करने के लिए भी सरकार की पहले परमिशन चाहिए। मतलब ये तो हर्डल पे हर्डल। करप्ट को पकड़ने की बात नहीं है, भ्रष्टाचारी को पकड़ने की बात नहीं है, भ्रष्टाचारी को कैसे प्रोटेक्ट किया जाए। तो प्रिवेंशन ऑफ करप्शन एक्ट को हमने प्रोटेक्शन ऑफ करप्शन एक्ट बना दिया, जो बहुत ही खेद वाली बात है, और हम देश के लोग ने कुछ किया नहीं। तो सतर्कता किसकी होनी चाहिए, विजिलेंस किसकी होनी चाहिए? क्या हम विजिलेंस डिपार्टमेंट से सतर्कता लाएंगे? ये लग नहीं रहा है। लोकपाल से लाएंगे? नहीं। एंटी करप्शन ब्यूरो से लाएंगे? नहीं। ये कोई भी सक्सेसफुल नहीं है अपने देश में। बल्कि ये तो कई लोग कहते हैं और शायद उसमें कुछ सत्य भी है कि विजिलेंस डिपार्टमेंट में भी करप्शन आ जाता है। तो इसका हल कहां पे मिलेगा? हल है भारत की लोकशाही, भारत का लोकतंत्र, डेमोक्रेसी हम कहते हैं। हम कहते हैं कि हम दुनिया की सबसे बड़ी डेमोक्रेसी है, सबसे बड़ा लोकतंत्र है। Democracy's definition, when I was in school, I was taught, is government of the people, for the people, by the people. Democracy is rule of the people, for the people, by the people. You and I are the rulers of this nation. हर नागरिक इस देश का बादशाह या बेगम है। लोकशाही जब हम कहते हैं, लोकशाही का एक ही मतलब निकलता है, लोगों की शहंशाही। जो लोग सुन रहे हैं इस बात को, ये सब इस देश के बादशाह या बेगम हैं। और अगर बादशाह और बेगम है तो उन्हीं को विजिलेंस रखना पड़ेगा। हमारा राज है। कहने को तो हमने स्वराज 15 अगस्त 1947 को ले लिया, मगर हकीकत में ये स्वराज था ही नहीं। इट वॉज अ ट्रांसफर ऑफ राज फ्रॉम द व्हाइट्स टू द ब्राउन्स। और ये डेमोक्रेसी का डेफिनेशन मीट नहीं करता, रूल ऑफ द पीपल, फॉर द पीपल, बाय द पीपल। तो फिर हम लोकशाही क्यों कहते हैं भारत को? इस वजह से कि अपने यहां इलेक्शन के बहुत फेयर सिस्टम है, जिससे हम नेताओं को चुनते हैं, हमारे रिप्रेजेंटेटिव्स को चुनते हैं, एमपीज एमएलएस को चुनते हैं और लीडर्स को बनाते हैं, निकालते हैं। ये हम करते हैं, ये फेयर तरह से सही बात है। I would submit to you that having a fair system of elections and a constitution are necessary conditions for a democracy, but are not the complete set of conditions. The heart and essence of democracy is the concept that each individual citizen is a sovereign in her own right, and she gives a part of the sovereignty to the state, in return for which she gets the rule of law. Sovereignty of the individual citizen is the key to a democracy, is the key to human rights, respect for the individual. ये कहां से आएगा, कैसे आएगा, कौन लेके आएगा? लीडर नहीं लेके आएंगे, पंत प्रधान, चीफ मिनिस्टर, मिनिस्टर, पॉलिटिकल क्लास ये नहीं लेके आएंगे। ये सब हमारे नुमाइंदे हैं, जिन पे विजिलेंस रखना सिटीजन्स का काम है। अगर लोकशाही है तो रूलर है तो हमारी ये जिम्मेदारी है। और ये कैसे हो सकता है? कह तो दिया मैंने। किसी एक ऐसे ही मैं सेशन में बात कर रहा था, तो ये लोकशाही की डेफिनेशन दे रहा था, तो एक यंग बच्चे ने खड़े होकर पूछा कि सर, आर यू सीरियस दैट वी आर रूलर्स ऑफ दिस नेशन? मैंने कहा हाँ। I own the nation. I said yes. He said, sir, अगर गवर्नमेंट की एक गाड़ी मुझे पसंद आए, मैं घर ले जा सकता हूं क्या? मैंने कहा आप नहीं ले जा सकते। उसने कहा कि मैं ओनर हूं, मैं रूलर हूं, तो मैं क्यों नहीं ले जा सकता? उसकी वजह सिंपल है, 130 करोड़ और भारतीय नागरिकों के साथ वो पार्टनरशिप में ओनरशिप है। तो अगर एक ने ले लिया तो दूसरों के नुकसान हो जाएगा, जो कि करप्शन में होता है। करप्शन में वही होता है कि दूसरों का अधिकार, दूसरों की प्रॉपर्टी हड़प लेता है कोई गैर कानूनी तौर से, गलत तरह से, और अपने आप को एनरिच करता है और दूसरों को नुकसान पहुंचाता है। तो मैंने कहा कि मगर जो सूचना भारत सरकार में है, स्टेट गवर्नमेंट में है, म्युनिसिपल कॉर्पोरेशन में है, पंचायत में है, वो भी आपकी है। और वो सूचना अगर आपको दी जाए तो और किसी का नुकसान नहीं होता है। तो सूचना का अधिकार, पारदर्शिता, ट्रांसपेरेंसी ऑफ इंफॉर्मेशन, ट्रांसपेरेंसी इन द वे द गवर्नमेंट रन्स, ट्रांसपेरेंसी इन द वे द गवर्नमेंट एक्ट्स, ट्रांसपेरेंसी गिविंग अस रीजंस एंड डिटेल्स फॉर व्हाट एक्शंस द गवर्नमेंट टेक्स शुड ऑल बी विथ अस। उसके बिना सतर्कता का कोई मतलब नहीं है। या हम हर साल प्रण लेते रहेंगे और भ्रष्टाचार चलता रहेगा, उजागर होता रहेगा। यही बात हम दोहराते रहेंगे। गए 20-25 साल में मुझे नहीं लगता कि करप्शन को हमने कोई खास ठेस पहुंचाई हो। पर करना है तो सतर्कता है जो नागरिकों को दिखानी पड़ेगी। एक छोटा सा उदाहरण देता हूं क्यों सतर्कता की जरूरत है नागरिकों से। एंटी करप्शन ब्यूरो बंबई ने अपनी वेबसाइट पे लिस्ट दिया है करीब 220 लोगों का, जिनको ब्राइब लेते हुए पकड़ा गया है। ब्राइब लेते हुए पकड़े गए पब्लिक सर्वेंट्स का 220 का लिस्ट है, जिन पे कोई कार्रवाई नहीं हुई है, इनको सस्पेंड भी नहीं किया गया है। दूसरा, ऐसे लोग हैं 10 से 12 लोग हैं जिन पे कन्विक्शन हो गया है, कोर्ट्स ने मान लिया है कि ये करप्ट है, इनको सजा होनी चाहिए, इस सजा भी हुई है, और उनको डिसमिस नहीं किया है सरकार ने कानून के हिसाब से। ये सब का कोई देख नहीं रहा। वेबसाइट पे लिखा है, वेबसाइट पे बताया है। मैंने लोकायुक्त से कंप्लेंट की है, अब देखते हैं क्या होता है, मगर ये दबाव जनता से आना पड़ेगा। एक ट्रांसपेरेंसी हो, लोग कहते हैं ट्रांसपेरेंसी नहीं होती, आरटीआई एक्ट के बावजूद ट्रांसपेरेंसी नहीं होती। बड़ा सिंपल तरीका है इसके लिए। सिस्टम ऐसी होनी चाहिए पारदर्शी की ऑटोमेटिक इंफॉर्मेशन हमको मिलती जाए, और मैं आपके सामने ये रखना चाहूंगा। अपना काम जो है पेपर के फाइल्स पे होता है, और कई बार ये होता है कि नागरिक किसी सरकारी दफ्तर में जाता है अपनी कंप्लेंट का क्या हुआ या उसके रिप्रेजेंटेशन का क्या हुआ ये देखने को, और कहा जाता है फाइल नहीं मिलता है। 100 रुपया दिया तो फाइल मिल जाएगी, 500 दिया तो रिकॉर्ड बंदी हो जाएगा, 1000 रुपया दिया तो रिकॉर्ड बंदी हो जाएगा, 5000 दिया तो फाइल गायब हो जाएगी। ये बहुत कॉमन है भ्रष्टाचार का तरीका। पूरी फाइलों को गायब कर दिया जाता है, और कुछ लाख रुपए दे दी तो महाराष्ट्र के तो मंत्रालय में आग लग गई थी। इससे हम बच सकते हैं, इसका हम उपाय निकाल सकते हैं। सब काम सरकारी दफ्तरों में कंप्यूटर्स हैं, और सूचना के अधिकार में ये प्रॉमिस था कि टाइम के अंदर हम इसको कंप्यूटराइज कर देंगे। सब सरकारी दफ्तरों में कंप्यूटर्स हैं। आप में से कईयों को पता होगा कि हर पंचायत में एक कंप्यूटर है। महाराष्ट्र की पंचायतों में 28,000 कंप्यूटर्स हैं, और कंप्यूटर चलाने वाले एक आदमी को हर पंचायत एम्प्लॉय करता है। इंटरनेट कनेक्टिविटी है। पूरे देश में आज कंप्यूटर्स हर दफ्तर में है, मगर वो कंप्यूटर्स को बेसिकली इलेक्ट्रिक टाइपराइटर के जैसे इस्तेमाल करते हैं। अगर कंप्यूटर पे ही पूरा काम हो, पेपर को नाबूद कर दिया जाए, पेपर को बैन कर दिया जाए, और फाइल्स इलेक्ट्रॉनिकली चलें ईमेल के जरिए, कंप्यूटर्स में ऐसी सिस्टम हो सकती है कि, और होती भी है, कि डिजिटल सिग्नेचर के जरिए ही ऑथराइजेशन हो, और अगर कोई भी चेंज किया बाद में तो पकड़ा जा सकता है किसने किया, कहां पे हुआ, इसके पहले क्या था। ये सब चीजें कंप्यूटर्स में मुमकिन है। तो मैं आपको गारंटी के साथ कहता हूं 30% भारत का भ्रष्टाचार बंद हो जाएगा, 30%, और हजारों करोड़ रुपए का पेपर फाइल्स वगैरह बच जाएगा, उनको रखने की जगह बच जाएगी। और सही माने में सतर्क नागरिक चाहिए तो हमें ये डिमांड करना पड़ेगा कि हमें पेपरलेस काम चाहिए गवर्नमेंट के अंदर। उसका एक साइड बेनिफिट ये हो जाएगा, कम से कम 10 से 20 लाख पेड़ हर साल बच जाएंगे, क्योंकि 10 से 20 लाख पेड़ काट के ये पेपर बनता है जो सरकारी दफ्तरों में होता है। By system we must aim at curbing corruption. By system we must aim at ensuring that things are transparent. हम बोलते रहे उससे नहीं होगा, और जो ऑफिस के दफ्तर में काम हो वो हर शाम को वेबसाइट पे आ जाए। अगर सरकारी अमलदार को ये पता है कि हर शाम को वेबसाइट पे आ जाएगा, तो वो ज्यादा भ्रष्टाचार करने से घबराएगा। और सतर्क किसको रहना है? नागरिक को सतर्क रहना है, भारत के बादशाह या बेगम को सतर्क रहना है, आप सबको और मुझे सतर्क रहना है। अगर हम और आप सतर्क नहीं रहे तो कुछ होगा नहीं। सतर्कता का हम पढ़ लेते रहेंगे, बोलते रहेंगे भ्रष्टाचार निकालो, ये ऐसे ही एम्प्टी वेसल्स हो जाएंगे, एम्प्टी भाषण हो जाएंगे। वी नीड टू एक्ट, you need to act, I need to act. We must take responsibility of being the ruler of this nation. If we do that, India will become less corrupt, a much better nation. Democracy will be actually vibrant. Active citizenship is the key to vigilance, not organizations, not lokpals, not vigilance departments. they may have some role. Also, a judiciary where there are no great delays. There are countries in the world where 70% of the cases are resolved in less than 1 year. In India, only 30% cases are resolved in a year. After 3 years, in many of the countries, the cases remaining are less than 1%. We have 40% cases remaining after 3 years. We need to change our judicial system, make it accountable, make it timely. Order transparency, ensure transparency by design, as I said, not by putting up things. Automatically, everything should get updated. Automatically, you and I should be able to see what is happening, what order was issued on a particular day. If we do that, we can hope for, and we will have a less corrupt society, a much better society, a society all of us will be proud of. मेरा एक स्लोगन है, इसके साथ मैं खत्म करूंगा मेरी बात. मेरा भारत महान हम लोग कई बार कहते हैं, मगर मानते नहीं है सचमुच. तो मेरा भारत महान नहीं है ऐसा मैं कहता हूं. मेरा भारत महान नहीं है, पर यह दोष मेरा है. मैं इस देश का राजा या बादशाह हूं, आप भी हैं. ये मेरे थोड़े से वक्तव्य के बाद यदि आप सब ये मानना शुरू कर दें कि आप इस देश के बादशाह या बेगम हैं, मैंने अपना लक्ष्य साध लिया है. थैंक यू, धन्यवाद.
Thank you very much, sir. It was indeed a very inspirational talk. Needless to say, we loved it. जैसा कि आपने कहा, सतर्कता रखना सिर्फ एक सरकारी विभाग का कर्तव्य नहीं है. राष्ट्र में हर व्यक्ति अपने आप में एक सतर्कता अधिकारी बन सकता है. And as you rightly said, digitization and e-governance with lesser human interaction can lead to more than 30% of reduction of corruption. This will also ensure transparency by design and reduce usage of paper by becoming eco-friendly as well. Sir, thank you so much for such kind words and inspirational talk. I hope that there is something to take away for everyone from your talk today, which is short and sweet. Sir, I would like to invite you to Shanti Kunj Haridwar and to the Dev Sanskriti Vishwavidyalaya, as this is the golden jubilee year of Shanti Kunj. And various thought leaders are visiting, and we would love to host you there. Whenever time permits and suits, please do visit, sir. We'll be waiting. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. So going
just one
forward,
message, just one
yes,
small message to everyone. At the cost of repetition, start believing कि आप बादशाह या बेगम है इस देश के, देश सुधर जाएगा.
That was the key takeaway, sir. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you. So taking forward today's Gyansabha, I would now request our very active Diya volunteer, Ms. Suchita Shetty, to kindly take the proceedings further. Suchita Didi.
Hello. Am I audible?
Yes, Didi, you are.
प्रणाम सभी को. एनटीपीसी परिवार, आदरणीय शैलेश गांधी सर, आदरणीय कार्तिकेयन सर और जुड़े हुए सारे पार्टिसिपेंट्स, दर्शक, बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद आज के कार्यक्रम के लिए. और आप जुड़े हैं एक ऐसे विषय को लेकर. इस कार्यक्रम की शुरुआत करने की पूर्व मुझे ऐसा लगता है कि इस क्रम की शुरुआत बहुत ही सुंदर तरीके हुई है, जौहरी सर के आशीर्वचनों से और आदरणीय गांधी जी के कुछ शब्दों से. मुझे जब उन्होंने कहा कि देश हमारा है और हमारा कर्तव्य बनता है, और बहुत ही कभी कि जब एक ऐसे विषय को लेकर हम सब भारतीय एकत्रित हुए हैं, ये एक पहल जो एनटीपीसी ने ली है. और एंड वी थैंक ऑन बिहाफ ऑफ दिया, वी थैंक everybody who's joined for this Gyan Sabha, which is a special edition. Just would like to touch upon a little on the theme as to why India celebrates Vigilance Awareness Week every year. This is especially to mark Sardar Patel ji's birthday, and it's such a beautiful theme. The theme of the Vigilance Week celebrations is Independent India at 75, Self-Reliance with Integrity. And I'm glad that in the series, as already mentioned by all the great personalities who've gathered, that vigilance and awareness are the hallmarks of a democracy, a system of governance by the people, for the people, which derives legitimacy through transparency and through a system of checks and balances. We all know that this Vigilance Awareness Week is celebrated every year in the birthday week of Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel ji's, who's often referred as the Bismarck of India. And the celebrations are planned. The whole idea of organizing this special edition of Gyansabha, which is the 80th edition, is aimed at recognizing the ill of corruption, promoting ways to combat it at an individual level and at an organizational level. Of course, this occasion is observed by the Central Vigilance Commission annually. And since then, the whole objective of organizing such seminars, conferences, talks is that something comes into action. And in this initiative, several education institutions, government offices, and corporates have taken this up. And I'm glad that NTPC has partnered with DIA for this cause. Both the great organizations have come together. Moving forward, we are glad that we have amongst us a youth, a youngster. And at the Mumbai, it's always been special where we channelize the youth energy. As you have already seen the video of the activities of Diya Mumbai. But yes, today it's special because we have amongst us respected Miss Anjali Bhardwaj, who has been closely associated with the right to information movement in India for over 2 decades and the co-convenor of the National Campaign for People's Right to Information, the NCPRI. It has played a pivotal role in campaigning an effective RTI Act in India, and since the passage of law in 2005, it has been working tirelessly to ensure its effective implementation. NCPRI has been advocating a series of anti-corruption and grievance redress laws. She is also the founder of Satark Nagrik Sangathan, a citizens group working in the slum citizens settlements of Delhi with a mandate to promote transparency and accountability in government functioning to encourage active participation of citizens in governance. Ma'am has always been anchoring all the efforts to monitor the implementation of Right to Information Act in India. She's been closely involved with initiatives to carry out people-led assessments of implementations of various provisions of law. To make a special mention, she has co-authored several such national reports. She is associated with various right-based struggles in India and is a member of the steering committee of the National Right to Food campaign. So it's basically she's a thorough Indian and her heart beats for India, like I think each Indian here. But it's just that our heart beats, but it is her actions that are louder than what she speaks, she writes. It's her actions which has got us here. And we are glad, we are privileged that we have amongst us. And I think everybody is aware the award that is being credited to her, the RTI activist Anjali Bhardwaj ma'am gets the US Anti-Corruption Award. Hearty congratulations, and I think this is a very small thing. I'm sure there are many to flow, and a lot of difference you're going to make in each one's lives and the country at large. With due respect, I request ma'am to please come over and present her words. Make this Gyan Sabha special. And the title that on which she would be talking is People's Right to Know. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you very much for those kind words, and I'd like to thank NTPC and Dia Foundation for having me here. I'm Shailesh has already spoken, and I hope to just kind of add to the things that have been said. The Right to Information law was passed in India in the year 2005. It really came about as a result of a very strong people's grassroots movement, which involved people not just from the intelligentsia, not just lawyers or academics or journalists, but people living on the at the margins, people living in remote villages, people living in slums, in urban settlements, who understood and felt the need to have information. Now, actually, the right to information has been guaranteed to all of us in the Constitution. So there have been many judgments by the Supreme Court of India where the right to information has been upheld to be a fundamental right flowing from Article 19, which is the article which deals with free speech and expression. So the Supreme Court has always held that for a very long time. It has pronounced judgments. It has held that unless people have information, they cannot have the freedom to speak and to express themselves. And that freedom is very, very essential in a democracy when we say that the government is of, by, and for the people, because it is on behalf of people that the government is functioning, and therefore any information that the government holds is really being held on behalf of those people. So that information is intrinsically theirs. The problem, however, was that despite the fact that the Constitution guarantees free speech and expression, and the Supreme Court clearly said that the freedom of information is part of that fundamental right, it's therefore a fundamental right, it was virtually impossible for citizens to be able to access information. In the remote villages, when people were not getting government works, they tried to go and ask at their, at the block level, at the panchayat level, for government records in which it would show how much work was supposed to come to the village and how much money was supposed to flow to the villages. That information was denied to people, and people who had worked on government works in drought affected areas in Rajasthan, for example, when they were not given their full wages and they asked for information, they asked for records, they were told that those records are confidential. So people really realized that unless they had access to information, it was impossible for them to even get their basic minimum wages. They were told that you are not working the full day and therefore you can't be given your daily wage. But when they tried to ask for the records to show, which showed how much they had worked, the records were told, they were told that the records are secret. So that understanding that unless people have information, they cannot get even their basic minimum wage became very clear to people. And this is what led people across the country, these experiences led them to demand an effective right to information law, which would ensure that we can access our right to information. There is a process, and if there is a denial of the right to information, there could be an appellate mechanism that can function and make sure that people get their information. The right to information law that was passed nationally in the year 2005, because it came after a strong people's movement, also had inputs and feedback from the whole campaigns, and people who had been demanding this and had some experience of using state-level RTI laws, which had got passed before 2005. There were 9 states in the country that had passed information access legislations, and people had used it. And on the basis of that, the draft of the 2005 legislation was put together. The law which was passed in 2005, the National Act, is considered one of the most progressive RTI laws anywhere in the world. But I think most importantly, it is a law which has been owned by the people of the country. It has been one of the most empowering legislations that has got passed in free India. And the reason is that it really helps people access information through which they are able to strengthen their struggles for basic rights, for entitlements, for the rights that they are guaranteed in the Constitution. When the Indian law was passed, I remember I worked with an organization called Satark Nagrik Sangathan, or SNS. We work in the slum settlements in Delhi. And I remember we went to the settlements and talked to people and said that there's this law which we must use. And some of the women in the slum bastis said that we don't even get our rations. What are we going to do with information? And we realized that people are interested in information not for the sake of information, but if it helps them access what they have been denied due to corruption, due to wrongdoing. People said that if at all we want to use the RTI law for accessing information about our rations which we've been denied. And they used to be denied their rations on the pretext that the ration shop is not receiving the ration from the government. So the first set of RTI applications, one of the first set of RTI applications that was filed was on the public distribution system, where people asked for information about their ration shop records. They asked for the stock registers of the shops, they asked for the sale registers of the shop. And when the information was received, the stock register showed that every month ration was reaching the shops. And the sale register was a complete work of fiction. It had names of people who ostensibly the ration had been given to, had been sold to at subsidized prices, people who had died a long time ago, people who never lived in those bastis. So when people got that information, they said that we had always suspected that there was corruption, but for the first time we have proof of corruption. Using that information, those records that they received, they filed complaints in the food department. And three kinds of action happened. One, of course, they held a public hearing where more than 500 families got together and publicly read out the records in the presence of government officials and showed that while their share of ration was reaching the shops, their own ration cards were proof of the fact that they had not received rations for years. So they complained, they publicly brought the corruption out, and the result was that various ration shop keepers and various ration shops who had been indulging in corruption, their licenses were cancelled. The second thing that happened was that departmental inquiries were launched against officials who were involved in that corruption. But most importantly, everyone started getting ration in those areas because there was a clear understanding that if there was corruption and people's ration was black marketed or pilfered, people will ask for information, they will expose the corruption, and it would have consequences. So people understood and realized, and this is something that has happened not just in Delhi, but across the country, where through such use of the RTI law, people have understood the link between their ability to access their right to information and their ability to access other rights that are due to them. Whether it is rations, or it is old age pensions, or it is medicines in government hospitals, we have seen that people in India have been very, very vibrantly using the right to information law. In fact, research has shown us that anywhere between 40 to 60 lakh RTI applications are filed every year in India. And when we have studied the RTI applications that have been filed, we have seen that a very large percentage is filed not by journalists or lawyers like it is in different countries, but actually by ordinary citizens who have asked for information that is relevant to them and have then used that information to hold the government accountable for the delivery of basic rights and services to them. Even during COVID, when we saw that public health facilities were collapsing, we saw how people were running from pillar to post, trying to access oxygen, trying to access essential medication. People understood the need for accurate information. People asked, filed RTI applications, asked for information from the government about various health facilities, and even afterwards, when the governments declared that they would give compensation for loss for those people who had lost their family members, and those family members were not being able to get that compensation, people have very effectively used the Right to Information Act. In fact, one instance that comes to mind is that of Gautam Giri, who lives in one of the slums, low-income settlements, and he and his family spent all their lives' incomes in trying to save his mother, who suffered from COVID, to get her oxygen and get her essential drugs, but could not save her life. So when she died and the government announced this compensation for families who had lost their family members, unfortunately, Gautam Giri realized that he was not getting that compensation from the government despite repeatedly visiting the government department. So he filed an RTI application and asked what was wanting in his application and why he was not getting the compensation. Immediately, within 3 weeks, he got a call from the department saying that, we have received your RTI application. We are unable to give you information, but we are transferring the funds into your accounts. Now, of course, he is following up in an appeal for that information as well. But these are the various ways in which people are constantly using the Right to Information Act in our country to realize their constitutional and basic rights. The RTI law has, of course, also been used to expose big ticket corruption. The law has been used to access information about the Vyapam scam. It has been used to access information which has exposed the Adarsh scam and many other scams in the country, which affect people at a very deep level. And this is one law which people have found very, very empowering and really helping them realize their democratic rights. So when we say that, in a democracy, people are supreme, the government is supposed to work for the people, that power balance, that balance of power, which we always saw was skewed in favor of those who govern, people feel that through their use of the Right to Information law, for the first time, that balance has tilted in favor of people, in favor of those who felt disempowered, of those who felt that they did not get what was due to them despite living in a democracy. Unfortunately, we have seen that there has been a pushback on this very important right. The right to information has unfortunately seen an attack on the entire transparency regime, and we have seen that different governments have not always worked to strengthen this particular right. Especially those who have vested interests have been targeting people who ask for information under the RTI law. Ever since the law was passed, since 2005, more than 90 people have been murdered for filing RTI applications and exposing corruption and wrongdoing. This really sends out a signal, unfortunately, that those who ask for information, those who expose corruption can really be vulnerable and need protection. These are, of course, this is just the tip of the iceberg. Because if we look at the number of people who have been threatened, who've been attacked, it's far more. It runs into thousands. And it is therefore very important that the Whistleblowers Protection Law that was passed in the year 2014 be immediately implemented. Unfortunately, we have seen that the law was passed after a long struggle in 2014, the Whistleblowers Protection Law, but it has not been implemented because the government has not promulgated rules to implement it. And although therefore it's on the statute books, but when people who are blowing the whistle on corruption, who are asking for information and then becoming whistleblowers, go and try and seek protection under the law, they are unable to do that. So it's extremely important if we want to strengthen the fight against corruption, if we want people in our democracy to be able to really hold the government and those who wield power accountable, that this important legislation, this enabling legislation, protecting legislation, also the Whistleblowers Protection Law, should also be immediately implemented. The other important issue I feel that needs to happen is that Section 4 of the RTI law, which is a very, very important section, significant section, which deals with proactive disclosure of information by governments, has to be implemented much better. In a country where many people don't have the resources to file RTI applications, to follow up RTI applications, it's very important that the government proactively provide information to people. So for example, even during the pandemic, it became very apparent that unless the government makes sure that information about rations, about subsidized food grains, information about hospitals and availability of oxygen and essential drugs is made available in real time to people, they will not be able to access those rights and save lives. So it's very important that Section 4 of the RTI Act, which places an obligation on the government to provide information on its own to people, should be implemented in letter and spirit. That unfortunately is not happening very well right now, and that is something that is really restricting people's right to information, because under the RTI law 2005 there are two ways by which people can access information. One is by asking through an application, by filing an application, and the other is by the government itself making information available. The third issue, which I think really needs attention, is the functioning of institutions that are meant to ensure transparency and are meant to curb corruption. The first institution is the information commissions, which under the information law, the RTI law, are supposed to be the watchdogs. If people don't get information, they can approach information commissions, who are supposed to function independently and are very empowered, because they can impose penalties on erring officials, they can direct governments to provide information to people where it is being denied wrongfully. And unfortunately, we find that information commissions are not working in a manner that would really be required in a country of our size and our population to be able to access information effectively. The first problem, of course, is that governments are not making appointments to information commissions. So we know that unless there are commissioners in a commission, the commission can't really function. So we have 3 commissions right now: Jharkhand, Tripura and Meghalaya, where not a single information commissioner has been appointed. And therefore, when people go with their appeals and complaints to the Information Commission, their complaints and appeals are not heard. And it's a basic denial of their right to information, therefore. Also, there are huge pendencies in these commissions, because even where appointments are made, timely appointments are not being made, and for a long time vacancies are allowed to persist in commissions where a full complement of commissioners is required. For example, in places like Maharashtra, Uttar Pradesh, where a full set of information commissioners is required, if those commissioners are not appointed on time or in the Central Information Commission, then it is really hurting the functioning of the commissions. There is a huge pendency that builds up, and people have to wait for very long to have their cases heard. Finally, who becomes an information commissioner is also very important, and it's something that the Supreme Court has also weighed in on. The court has held that appointments to the commissions have to be made in a transparent manner so that the right sort of people become information commissioners who can really work for the right to information of citizens of the country. It's not just the information commissions. For an effective anti-corruption regime in the country, we need transparency, but we also need accountability. We need effective anti-corruption organizations and institutions which are independent of the government and are also empowered. So, for example, the Lokpal, the law came into existence after a very, very long campaign. And in 2014, when the law was passed, people had hoped that a strong and independent and empowered institution would be set up. But for 5 years, no appointment was made, no Lokpal was appointed. And in 2019, when the Lokpal was finally appointed, the commissioners were appointed in the Lokpal, we saw that the appointments were made in a manner which was neither transparent nor was it independent of the government. And as a result, people's trust in the Lokpal, we have seen it take a big hit. And unfortunately, one institution that could have effectively tackled corruption at the highest levels has not been functioning the way everybody had hoped that it would. Similarly, appointments to the CBI, appointments to the CVC are also not being made. The Enforcement Directorate are not being made in a transparent and accountable manner. It's very important for public trust and for people to feel that the government and the system is serious about countering corruption. It's important that these institutions function properly, that appointments to them be made in an independent manner, and the right sort of people come to the helm. And it's extremely important, I think, for the health of our democracy, that there be as much transparency and accountability in the way our governments function, whether they are at the national level or they are at the state level, or in fact even the public sector units and the various trusts that are set up. I just want to end by saying that for people to be vigilant, the first thing they need is information. And it's something that people in our country have recognized very strongly, and which is why there has been such a strong demand for a right to information law. After the law got passed, there is such a strong demand for information in lakhs. We have information applications filed, and there is such a strong will to protect our transparency. We've seen how people have approached the courts, how people have taken to the streets where they can, they have raised their voices when things like electoral bonds, when things are brought in, schemes are brought in, programs are brought in which are not transparent. Electoral bonds, we know, allow for political parties to take in unlimited anonymous funding. And we know that in countries like ours, which are a democracy, the heart of corruption is political party funding. So there needs to be much more transparency, and unfortunately, the electoral bonds that have been brought in actually reduce transparency, don't allow people to know who is funding political parties, and therefore who political parties are working for after they get elected and form governments. Similarly, there has been a demand that the PM Cares Fund, which has been set up to help people cope with disaster during COVID, this massive disaster that has struck the world, but also our country in a very big way. If people could access funds and would know where the funds from PM Cares are going, how much funds are coming in, how they are being spent, if they are being spent to supply ventilators, where are those ventilators going, if they are being spent, as we are told, on providing help to migrant workers, then what is the breakup of the funds? We are told that 1,000 crore rupees from the PM Cares Fund is being spent on welfare of migrant workers. Unfortunately, because the PM Cares is not brought under the RTI law, because citizens are being told that PM Cares Trust is not a public authority, therefore they are not providing information. People have no way of finding out, of exercising any kind of vigilance, of being able to avail of those very important funds. So it's extremely important that governments recognize that this is not just information provision, is not just something that they can do at their whim. It is something that is constitutionally guaranteed to people in our democracy, and it really is something that impacts people's lives, because without information, there is no way that people can get what is due to them. And if people are to live a life of dignity, if people are to survive in the current circumstances where employment issues are a huge problem after the lockdowns and the COVID crisis, so many people have lost employment. They don't have even basic access to food. In such circumstances, people don't have money to go to private hospitals. They need the information that government is holding, and it needs to be provided to them for people to live a life of dignity. I will stop here. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for sharing and giving such sharp insights for the work that you've been doing tirelessly. And at IIT Mumbai, Dia salutes Ms. Bhardwaj, ma'am, who's been working tirelessly, often in the face of adversities, to defend transparency, combat corruption, and to ensure accountability in their respective countries. The stories that you shared, I think that has really given a spark to all the youngsters, and this is where the series of questions have begun. There's a student, Dipti, who would like to ask, how could students contribute to a corruption-free India right from their student life? And this question is to you.
Sure. I think there is no question that unless the youth of a country participates, unless they actively engage there cannot be a strong democracy. So I think that there is no question that young people, especially those who have had the privilege of education, must exercise the right to information. The law is being used very vibrantly, like I said, by people across the country. Every year, like I told you, that about 40 to 60 lakh RTI applications are being filed. It's very important that we all think of various things on which information should be in the public domain. It could be anything that is of interest to us, whether it is roads that are being constructed in our colonies, or it is education in schools or universities, public universities, or it is hospitals, public health facilities. We can take up issues anywhere, and each one of us as citizens can file RTI applications, and we must access that information and make use of that information to ensure that government is functioning properly, public money is being spent properly, and many people we have seen are doing social audits, and this includes students who do social audits using the information that they obtain under the RTI Act. So there are many cases where students have actually accessed information about rations and then have gone to the ration shops to check and find out with people living in the nearby communities. They've gone to check if the ration is being distributed properly. There are many students who have actually taken up the issue of health facilities to check how many doctors are supposed to come, whether it's in a remote facility or even in an urban center. How many doctors are supposed to come? What is the stock of medicines that is supposed to be available in dispensaries, local dispensaries, government dispensaries, or even large hospitals? And then done a checking of that to make sure that these facilities are functioning properly. So I think that there is great potential for all of us, never mind our age, to actually go out and exercise our right to know and participate in governance, because the only way that a democracy can function well is if people participate, and the best way for them to participate is to inform themselves, to get information, and in an informed way go out and meaningfully participate in the democratic process.
Thank you so much, Ms. Bhardwaj ma'am. And on behalf of all World Gayatri Parivar, would request you to kindly visit our headquarters, Shanti Kunj Haridwar, a city called Dev Sanskriti Vishwavidyalaya, a university with a difference. Students would definitely like to hear from you, and the team of youngsters would be waiting to learn from you, maybe from the stories that you just shared on this platform, or guiding us today. Mr. Gandhi, respected Mr. Gandhi, there's a question for you. And the question is from Kanti Bhai from Amreli, Gujarat. What are the steps that one can take to make vigilant citizens? And how do we go about creating awareness among the masses about their rights and government policies that impact lives? Mr. Gandhi, are you able to hear me? The question is flashed on the screen as well.
Yeah. The first thing is that citizens must understand that they are responsible. Once you start believing that you are responsible and you own the issues, things follow. For example, as my friend Anjali said, the simplest way is filing an IT application to expose something or to make people vigilant, to make them understand that they are accountable. That a normal IT application does not take more than half an hour of your time. And my survey shows that all citizens crib for about 2 hours every month about what is wrong with the country. Take out half an hour, file one IT application, decide that you will try and get corrections done. Secondly, social audits, as Anjali said, is a very useful way of getting things done. On how to make citizens aware, here are some suggestions. Hold webinars, hold meetings, talk to 5 people and say that, look, it is your job. The first thing which I think is missing in India is citizens do not feel responsible for vigilance. Citizens do not feel responsible for the nation. The standard thing is the government is to blame, the political class is to blame, the politicians are corrupt and so on and so forth. When will we take responsibility? The first step is to take responsibility for what is happening. The first step is to feel responsible and then take action. If you start feeling, it's like, let me give a very simple example. An uneducated lady in a torn sari going in a bus, if her child is crying, she tries to comfort the child. She may not be a pediatrician, she may not have any knowledge of medicine, she may not understand anything, but 99% she manages to comfort the child in a few minutes' time. That's because she's the mother of the. Citizens must mother the problems of the nation. Patriotism is not merely singing the national anthem and standing before the flag. Patriotism should actually be feeling that I can make the change in the nation, having the confidence that I will make it and I am responsible. That sense of responsibility, the moment you get it, the rest follows beautifully.
I think, sir, that was beautifully said. I think for me, the takeaway from today's gathering, and that is something that personal life, individual level, and something at a nation level, or for that matter, at a global level as well. We have amongst us respected Mr. Karthikeyan, sir, who joined us since the beginning of the talk. And with due respect, I would like to introduce the third speaker for the day, Dr. Karthikeyan, sir, former Director, Central Bureau of Investigation, Director General, National Human Rights Commission, Special Director General, Central Reserve Police Force. And the topic that sir would be speaking today is Vigilant India, Prosperous Nation. So without wasting any further time, with due respect, all well Gayatri Parivar is glad and happy, honored to have respect her. Let me also make special mention that he's president for Foundation for Peace, Harmony and Good Governance. And apart from that, an avid reader, a great writer, and something that he professes among the youth is, of course, having an overall complete well-being that includes physical, mental and emotional. And we are happy, we are glad that when we are having Vigilance Week celebrations, we have Sir's guidance and blessings for this edition. I request Sir to please come over and speak on the topic Vigilant India, Prosperous Nation. Over to you, sir.
Namaskar. Professor Suchita Shetty-ji, Sridharji, dedicated members of Gyansabha, the Divine India Youth Association. Namaskar. Good evening to all of you. Let me first compliment Dia for organizing this seminar on the most important theme of self-reliance with integrity and vigilance. Let me pay my pranams to the Chancellor, most respected, Shraddheya Dr. Pranab Pandya-ji, Puja Mataji, and dear Chinmaya Pandya-ji. The eminent speakers, panelists, Shri, Shailesh Gandhiji and Dr. Anjali Bhardwaj have spoken so beautifully on the subject, given practical suggestions, and they have been on the field fighting for it. They have made a big difference. They are responsible for the RTI to be brought in. They have also pointed out the deficiency is there in appointment, etc. And also what every citizen, responsible citizen, should do about it. I endorse every word of what they said. The subject given to me by you is Vigilant India, Prosperous India. It's a vast subject, but let me try to share some of my thoughts on the theme. In today's world, the most serious challenge to civilized existence is not just poverty, not even terrorism, but corruption. Corruption is a major cause even for the persistence of poverty and the thriving of terrorism. The father of the nation, Mahatma Gandhiji, I would like to quote him. He described the 7 sins as politics without principles, wealth without work, pleasure without conscience, knowledge without character, commerce without morality, science without humanity, and worship without sacrifice. He said, corruption will be eradicated when the large number of people given to this practice realize that society does not exist for them, but they exist for the society. The same has been beautifully said by the labeled panelists before me. The World Bank has identified corruption as among the greatest obstacles to economic and social development. It undermines development and social justice. Corruption sabotages policies and programs that aim to reduce poverty and injustice. Corruption distorts the rule of law, weakens a nation's institutional foundation. Transparency is very important in a healthy, growing organization and, of course, the nation as a whole. Everything secret degenerates, even the administration of justice. Nothing is safe, does not show how it can bear discussion, publicity, and scrutiny. I am quoting Lord Acton, historian. Select good people, keep good company. Satsang, the first method for estimating the intelligence of a ruler, leaders, is to look at the men he has around him. I am quoting Machiavelli, the political philosopher and author. I repeat, select good people. This is what emphasized by the eminent panelists earlier. Select honest people, keep good company. Satsang, the first method for establishing the intelligence of a ruler, leader, is to look at the men he has around him. They should select a men of character, integrity. Ethics is the activity of man directed to secure the inner perfection of his own personality. Ethics is nothing else than reverence for life. Thomas Jefferson said, American president, I consider ethics as well as religion as supplements to law in the governance of man. Without ethics, there is no governance. To quote the greatest scientist of the last century, Albert Einstein, I quote him, I do not believe in immortality of the individual, and I consider ethics to be an exclusively human concern with no superhuman authority behind it. The Russian novelist also said, even the most rational approach to ethics is defenseless if there is the will to do what is right. So, ladies and gentlemen, India's stellar performance in rankings on growth indicators, nobody can deny. We have achieved quite a lot in the last 70 years. India's stellar performance in rankings on growth indicators and its innovative approaches to poverty alleviation are often compromised by absence of noticeable efforts in governance reforms for ensuring high levels of integrity, enhanced transparency, and probity in public and corporate life. It's a commonly held view that political and bureaucratic corruption, public funds embezzlement, fraudulent procurement practices, and corruption in the enforcement and regulatory institutions, and consumer exploitation by private companies, contractors plague Indian public life. Studies and published surveys have reinforced this public perception, and they have persistently shown that corruption persists in India despite many steps taken by successive governments. Examining the root causes of corruption in India and understanding its several manifestations is necessary to place the problem in its context and is an essential prerequisite for policy formulation. Impact of corruption and the need for a national anti-corruption strategy has been felt all over the world in all countries. Globally, there is a general consensus amongst most academics and policymakers that the debilitating effects of corruption permeate through all aspects of public life. Several studies have shown that corruption not only stifles growth, it also perpetuates inequalities, deepens poverty, causes human suffering, dilutes the fight against terrorism and organized crime, and tarnishes India's image globally. Every country, same. The impact of corruption is multifold, encompassing political costs, economic costs, social costs, environmental costs, and issues of national security. The political costs of corruption are manifested in weakened public trust in political institutions, reduced political participation. People think, oh, the whole thing is corrupt, why should I participate in that? Perversion of the electoral process, restricted political choices available to citizens. They say, well, this group or that group, they're all the same. Frustration. And loss of legitimacy of the democratic system. Economic costs. Corruption reduces economic efficiency by misallocation of resources in favor of rent-seeking activities, increasing the cost of public transactions, acting as an additional tax on business, thereby reducing investment, reducing genuine business competition. Social costs. The effect of corruption on the social fabric of society is perhaps the most alarming damage of all, as explained by the eminent panelists earlier. Corruption distorts the value systems and wrongly attaches the elevated status to occupations that have rent-seeking opportunities, that is, opportunity to make money illegally. This results in a disillusioned public, a weak civil society, which attracts unscrupulous leaders only in public life. Eventually, there is a risk that demanding and paying bribes could become the normal, as it has happened in many sectors even today. What about the cost to environment? Environmental degradation is an indirect but serious consequence of corrupt systems. Environmentally devastating projects are given preference in funding because they are easy targets for siphoning of public money into private pockets. Issues of national security also. Corruption within the security agencies can lead to threat to national security, including through distortion of procurement, corruption in procurement of even weapons, armaments, recruitment of ineligible persons to positions of importance, providing an easy route for smuggling of weapons and terrorist elements into country and money laundering. So there is a need for a national anti-corruption strategy. Given the dire consequences of corruption, it is quite evident that it needs to be explicitly taken into account in India's overall development strategy. The absence of institutions and legislations crafted to combat corruption is not the problem of India, given the wide range of anti-corruption related steps taken in the past 6 decades. However, significant gaps still remain between the policy, practice, and implementation. Existing anti-corruption interventions are mostly in nature, but very often implemented. For integrity to become embedded in public life, it's important that India shifts from this punitive approach to a more holistic, preventive, and participative approach. By more citizens participating, as was mentioned by Mr. Gandhi. Moreover, a tendency has to set in where the fight against corruption is seen as the job of a few anti-corruption agencies only, whereas in reality, it is the responsibility of every citizen and every organization. Therefore, a need was felt for a single comprehensive strategy that harmonizes the efforts of all stakeholders to fight corruption and set an agenda for collective action. Hence, a comprehensive approach to fill this gap, an approach that targets the root causes of corruption while strengthening detection and enforcement mechanisms and introducing systemic reform, which is the need of the day. In doing so, it is important to acknowledge that corruption is a reflection of both social and political values as well as weak institutions. Given the entrenchment of corruption in our society, for any strategy against corruption to be successful, sustained commitment from all sectors of society, including political leaders, various government agencies, civil society, media, the private sector, and more than anybody else, the common man, will be imperative. It has been widely recognized that a realistic strategy to combat corruption needs to be a participatory one that enlists input in devising as well as cooperating and implementing from these various stakeholders. We should all focus on the importance of values and ethics and the role of education and awareness so as to bring in the citizen as a key player in the fight against corruption. National anti-corruption strategy should have vision, mission, objectives, and approach. A nation built on good governance, transparency and integrity, and free from all forms of corruption, and a responsible society aware of its ethical responsibilities. To channelize, what should be the mission? To channelize, integrate the resources, and build synergy to the efforts of all stakeholders in society to promote integrity in governance and progressively eliminate corruption from India through effective prevention, detection, and strong, stringent punishment of all corrupt practices. What should be the objectives? To ensure adherence to ethical standards and integrity in the functioning of the Indian Republic by engaging all stakeholders by raising public awareness to promote zero tolerance towards corruption, undertaking effective preventive measures to minimize the scope for corruption, strengthening legal and regulatory framework and capacity building of the institutions of accountability as well as enforcement agencies, creating sustainable deterrence against corruption by strict and prompt enforcement of anti-corruption laws and regulations, enhancing collaboration among all stakeholders in ensuring that corruption cases are detected, reported, prosecuted properly and without much of delay, reducing opportunities of investment and utilization of wealth earned through corrupt means. One of the essential requirements of good governance is the corruption-free administration and delivery of justice, as we have seen now. But unfortunately, corruption has struck deep roots in our society. It's a fact. You can't close your eyes and say everything it is all right. No. At every level of administration, corrupt elements cause immense loss to the nation and the society. Today, no institution, no field of activity in the country can claim to be unafflicted by corruption. It is common knowledge that the Buddha the Great asked a woman to get him mustard seeds from a household that has not witnessed a death. If Buddha were to alive in contemporary India, he would have perhaps asked for mustard seeds to be brought for a household that has not come to face with corruption, either as a giver or a taker. It only shows all pervasiveness of the socio-economic political malady which is wrecking the nation. The one balance which has badly affected all sections of the population is corruption. In fact, corruption is the major cause for the benefit and development that has taken place, not reaching vast segments of the population who deserve it, who need it. Immediately after independence, knowing the problem of corruption, Mahatma Gandhi, father of the nation, sought to rally against the menace of corruption. Corruption in India has multiple channels of expression. One of the ways of advancing our understanding of the problem is to distinguish between the very forms it takes a widely accepted distinction, one that can be applied to the Indian context, is that between petty and grand corruption. Petty corruption is either the collusive or coercive action of a public official vis-a-vis the member of a public to subvert the system over relatively small transaction. It therefore mostly involves down the line public officials lower down. But the grand corruption is the subversion of the entire system by senior government officials and formations of political executive, usually in collusion with private sector players. In India, both forms of corruption are prevalent, as a result of which corruption has become endemic to Indian society. It is also noteworthy that even a matter as important as national security could be at risk due to various forms of corruption. We are faced with an anomalous situation in which 1% of the population, claiming to serve the rest of the community and holding various positions of power at various levels, exploit, dominate, and dictate to 99% of the population whom they have undertaken to serve. Corruption has many avatars, incarnations, some of them in the form of donations, capitation fees, building funds. Corruption means harming others. Being violence, it's the worst form of violence. It is against all norms of ethics, morality, and laws. Corruption flourishes where there is no transparency, excessive concentration of power, and very little of accountability. Greed consumes all virtues and qualities. I repeat, greed consumes all virtues and qualities, and even patriotism, as we have seen. Right to corruption-free governance and administration has to be treated as the most fundamental human right of everyone. Corruption is a low-risk and high-profit business. If morality could control crime, then there would be no need for law. According to the Transparency International, India is one of the most corrupt countries in the world, a matter of great shame for us. India falls to 86th rank in Corruption Perception Index 2020. It has slipped to 6 places to 86 from 180 countries in the Corruption Perception Index. For 2020, TI's Corruption Perception was released today, or last month, I think, recently. The index, which ranks 180 countries and territories by their perceived levels of public sector corruption, was a scale of 0 to 100, where 0 is highly corrupt, 100 is very clean. Corruption is like AIDS of society, brought about by uncontrolled financial misbehavior, is the biggest challenge. Based on the survey conducted by the Transparency International, in India, an amount of 8,830 million rupees have been paid by not only the rich, but even the below poverty level households alone in getting their 11 essential services. Where men are pure, laws are not required and useless. When men are corrupt, laws are broken and again have become useless. So unless effectively checked and put down, corruption like terrorism may prove death knell of the entire nation. An effective anti-corruption strategy builds on just put in very brief bullet points: increase political accountability, strengthen civil society participation, create competitive private sector, institutional restraints on power, improve public sector management, speed up decision-making process, including the investigation and courts also, transparency in governance and decision-making. Ladies and gentlemen, yes, it's true, prevention is better than cure. At the level of an organization, it is essential to have in place various systems and control procedures in order to prevent the occurrence of corruption. Systems and control procedures placed would prevent the occurrence of corruption, and even when corruption occurs at one level of organization, the systems will bring the case immediately into light because of systems placed at the next level. US firms, American firms, seeking to do business in foreign markets must be familiar with the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act. In general, the act prohibits corrupt payments to foreign officials for the purpose of obtaining or keeping business. In India, which exclusively deals with corruption, is the Prevention of Corruption Act, about which All of you know, I don't have to talk much about it. In every organization, essential to have various systems and control procedures. Is a low risk, high profit business. I told you, several agencies are, but it remains a challenge to the business to investigate anti-corruption cases and charge sheet them successfully. When talking about corruption, the common man is generally helpless. Our action is generally restricted to complaining in our drawing rooms, as was by Dr. Gandhi, and intense debates on the television media, but no positive change seems to be happening. Those of you who are watching this program, ladies and gentlemen, chances are that your economic position is amongst the top 10 in the country. But imagine the plight of those remaining 90%. The people who suffer are the ones who are at the bottom of the pyramid. The money spent for them gets siphoned off, and they continue to remain poor and struggle even for basic needs of food, water, health, and shelter. So the Make in India initiative cannot achieve its goals without ensuring corruption-free governance. Corruption continues to be a major challenge. The Making of India should focus on infusing integrity and rectitude in governance, the right information, and efforts to seek greater transparency in the functioning government has made a positive impact. We have a long way to go ensuring that basic services which citizens are entitled to are free from corruption. The tragedy of the Making of India is that Make in India will not be effective till such time corruption is weeded out of the system. So it's unfortunate that even after the law relating to low poll having passed in Parliament, people do not feel any great impact. Now, I think my time is up. I would like to close thanking. I compliment Dia and the wonderful people, the youth behind this organization for taking up such important subjects for debate. You can say, what have we achieved? We have not achieved much, so we are talking about the same thing. But we can't give it up. I only will quote Mother Teresa. People are asking her, you are a frail old lady walking the streets of Calcutta. How many orphans you are going to save? How many lepers identify you cure? She said, it's true. I cannot do everything, but that does not mean I will do nothing. Whatever steps I will do it. So every one of us have got a duty to continue to raise our voice, activities, because someday we will realize the Bharat. That was the dream of Mahatma Gandhi, a corruption-free, prosperous country with social justice at all levels, and India about which we will all be proud of. Thank you. Namaskar.
Delight. And as usual, it has always been a pleasure listening to you, and a lot of takeaways for us. Something that you say that it's time that we should not be keeping quiet but raise our voice. And the beautiful point that you mentioned that we are privileged that we are among the top 10 of the country, but what about the 90%, the common man? And it's high time that we get up, realize that responsibility towards our mother, towards our country, and work towards the same. Sir, there is a question which is coming in from Dr. Sonali from Nagpur for you. It says, how do we strike the right balance between individual freedom and collective interest of a society or nation? I'm sure the positions that you've held, this is something that has been a part of your journey. If you could just throw some light on the same. Thank you, sir.
There is no conflict at all. Where is the conflict? What is the conflict? Individual freedom, your freedom, yes, for your movement. But the moment I swing my arms to hitting somebody's face, my freedom, there is a restriction. There is nothing called absolute freedom to do what you like. You can do what you like with you can't even do what you like because you have to protect the environment also. No, we can all function with full liberty and freedom and enjoy all the rights and freedoms given to us by the divine, but we have no right to cause any damage, any hurt to anyone else. I would like to quote two substance of all spiritual masters, I'm telling you. That is, You take only the two vows. You don't have to do anything else in life. That is, knowingly, I will not cause any hurt, any injury to anyone else or anything else. Secondly, to the extent possible, I will do my best to relieve the pain, pressure, hurt of anyone else, which means not only I will not harm other human beings, not even to any beings, not even to the planet, because we have done lot of damage to the planet. Trees, they all have life. We have done. That's why there's a crisis, the global crisis. I have written one newsletter which has gone all over the world. I said, Earth is our only planet. Earth is the only home we have. Let us save it. The damage we have done, thinking I got all the liberties. You have the liberty, but you have no right to harm other creatures. The human being, everything is not created for just human beings. You are only one of the millions of species. You can enjoy your life the way the ancestors have lived and given. You are a trustee for the generations to come. You think this is the last generation, exploiting everything. People say, I have written that I wrote a few months back. I said 100 years later, after 100 years, I wonder how my grandchildren will live. They will curse me. They will say this man belongs to a generation which has destroyed everything. They will not get enough clean water to drink, breathe clean air to breathe. But I'm telling you, madam, the last 1 year after I wrote that letter, which went all over, now we are worried whether that catastrophe we may reach even in 50 years. You are seeing what is happening to the planet, all because we thought I can do whatever I want. Freedom. Your freedom is you cannot extend it to harm anybody else or anything else. Individual right. What is individual right? You can't cause call, you can't even utter a word. By word, deed, or action, you cannot cause any harm to anybody else. Anything else? Otherwise, you are destroying. You are being ungrateful to your parents. You are ungrateful to your future generations. This is what we have come to now. See all these international conferences happening. But what happens ultimately? Where is the implementation? Unless each one of us, I said you don't put only on the rulers, unless each one of us become conscious. And immediately, you can't delay it because time is up. You can't delay it already. Even if you stop all this nonsense we are doing to the planet, they say you can't stop the melting of glaciers. They say what we have done so far itself is going to raise the temperature. Many coastal cities will go. It's not a story. Science says that. All islands will go, no doubt, but even coastal cities like Bombay, they are going to be inundated. It's the reality of the situation. So I want to tell our friend in Moscow, I have lived there in Russia, our individual freedom is only limited to what we can enjoy without harming anybody else, anything else. That's our responsibility.
Thank you, sir. So the next question is directed to Shailesh ji. What are the top 5 suggestions for preventive, participative, and punitive vigilance?
I can only go back and point out that what I have saying, I have probably not communicated well enough. You take responsibility. Don't ask somebody else to tell you. The mother that I mentioned in a train has no expertise, but she looks at it as her responsibility. The moment you feel you own something, the moment a housewife feels I have to cook and I have to do it well, the moment the person who sweeps the floor says I must sweep the floor well, taking responsibility for the nation, feeling responsible for the nation. As Mr. Karthikeyan pointed out, without hurting anybody. And there is, of course, the famous Gandhi talisman, in case you are ever in doubt. think of the poorest man in the country and whether your action will benefit him or not. And that will be your true test for this. I also submit that your conscience is your best test. Ask your conscience. If your conscience says it is wrong, do not do it. If your conscience says it is right, do it. But most importantly, I repeat at the cost of repetition, the moment you feel you own the nation, you are ruler of the nation. Ask yourself, if I was Akbar Badshah and I rule this nation, what would I do? Answers will come automatically. Each case is different. Each individual is in different positions. Each one has different weaknesses and strengths. That is for the individual to decide. But the moment you take responsibility, automatically the rest will follow.
Thank you so much, sir. I think the litmus test that you spoke about, ask your conscience, that's something I think which is going to be handy for all of us. There's a question which has come for Bhardwaj ma'am. How do we protect integrity at all levels?
I think, it's something that everyone has spoken about, Mr. Karthikeyan, Shailesh, in his various interventions as well. One very important issue is if there is openness, like they say, sunlight is the best disinfectant. So if we want to rid our society, our country of corruption, we want greater integrity, better ethics. The first thing that we need to start by doing is infusing greater openness and transparency in our society. And that, I think, is the tool of the right to information is a fantastic tool for that. And again, even with the right to information, there is an obligation on governments to provide information. And I think also it's our duty as citizens to forever be vigilant and to ask for information and make sure that that there is openness and transparency. We know that it is behind a veil of secrecy that very often corruption thrives, very often abuse of power thrives. The moment that veil is lifted, the moment people have information, there is automatically an accountability that is infused into the system. Also, I think the whole importance of institutions and institutions that are supposed to ensure in a democracy that people are able to exercise their right to information, their right to hold the government accountable, their right to question the government and get answers. I think those institutions need to function properly. And, that of course starts at the top with the judiciary, our Supreme Court, our high courts, the higher judiciary, but the lower judiciary and other institutions of accountability as well.
Dr. Karthikeyan, would you like to add on? You're trying to say something on this question because I could hear.
On what?
So the same question.
I think they answered it beautifully.
Okay.
Your conscience. See, conscience is the best judge. You ask your conscience, will I do this? Can I do something and justify it? I told you the two policies. Knowingly, I will not do it. I will not hurt anyone. I will not do a wrong thing. I will do my duty. What is expected of me, whatever little it is. Whether you're king or whatever role it is. And then also, not enough. To the extent possible, I will try to relieve the pain of others to the extent possible. That makes you a real human being. Humanity. Just by living by myself and going, at least, well, you are not doing any harm. But how do you justify your existence? You are given by the divine birth is given. Not only lead a righteous life, but also relieve the pain of someone below you who is not that fortunate. That's our duty. Otherwise, what is the purpose of just existence and going away? That's not the purpose. No? We can keep on talking. Suchita ji, this is a beautiful subject. We are talking about it because we have been talking about it. Very little is happening, so we keep talking about it. Yes, we can't stop it. If we are able to achieve something, we can't allow the nation going into. Things will change. After all, hope, we all live on hope, And for example, these two warriors, they have, on human rights, they have not what law, they are individuals. They're just individuals. If they thought, oh, I'm an individual, what can I do? How much of reforms, how much of they are able to bring relief to so many millions of people, They give they made it possible. So like that, they are all living examples, inspiring people. I have all great admiration for these two eminent personalities.
Thank you so much, sir. We have great admirations for them. Ms. Bhardwaj, ma'am, among the 12 recipients of U.S. Anti-Corruption Champions Award named by the U.S. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken. Respected Shailesh Gandhi, sir. I think he needs no identification, recognition for the selfless work that he's doing, and of course you, sir. So thank you so much, all three esteemed guests, rather Indians who worked, who spoken, but their actions speak louder than anything else. Thank you so much on behalf of All World Gayatri Parivar. It's your home. On behalf of All World Gayatri Parivar, I would request you to visit our headquarters, Shanti Kunj Haridwar, which is celebrating its Golden Jubilee celebrations this year. Sir, right now, Honorable Home Minister Amit Shah ji is addressing people at Dev Sanskriti Vishwavidyalaya Haridwar. Today is his visit to this great place. I'm sure all three are, Shanti Kunj is your home to visit anytime.
I've been there a number of times.
Yeah.
It is a beautiful place, yes.
Yes. So we conclude today's Gyansabha with the punchline that Guruji, Pandit Shri Ram Sharma Acharya ji, head of All World Gayatri Parivar, said, "Hum badlenge, yug badlega, hum sudhrenge, yug sudhrega." And change starts from self, and the solution lies in making vigilant citizens. We also have a Yug Nirman Satsang, which just speaks about the same things, and there are just few lines that I would like to share. मर्यादाओं का पालन करेंगे, वर्जनाओं से बचेंगे, नागरिक कर्तव्यों का पालन करेंगे और समाजनिष्ठ बने रहेंगे. समझदारी, ईमानदारी, जिम्मेदारी और बहादुरी को जीवन का एक अविच्छिन्न अंग मानेंगे. अनीति से प्राप्त सफलता की अपेक्षा नीति पर चलते हुए असफलता को शिरोधार्य करेंगे. हम बदलेंगे, युग बदलेगा. हम सुधरेंगे, इस युग सुधरेगा. इस तथ्य पर हमारा परिपूर्ण विश्वास है. हमारा परिपूर्ण विश्वास है. हमारा परिपूर्ण विश्वास है. So this is the slogan that we generally, volunteers at All World Gayatri Parivar, conclude with all our programs that we have. We thank you from the bottom of our heart, on behalf of the All World Gayatri Parivar. And sir, I would like to make a special mention of some individuals who really put in their heart. I would thank Ms. Amrita, who's been there to connect us to Anjali Bhardwaj ma'am. I thank Shailesh Gandhi sir for blessing us on Gyansabha for the second time. Dr. Karthikeyan sir, and I think our IT team, Snigdha, Vibhor, Harshul ji, Ishan ji, and of course, not to forget the great organization Nuclear Thermal Power Corporation Western Region, Mr. Ajay Gupta ji, who thought about this in his mind, but it was translated by all this beautiful bunch of people. Respected Johari sir, Mr. Pramod Temburde sir, and yes, there are a lot of people at NTPC who thought about it, and we were talking about it, but we really didn't know how the execution would happen. This wouldn't have happened if for the love, support, and encouragement of all the individuals who've gathered. So I request all of you who've joined on Restream Studio to put on their videos so that we could have a group snap and keep this as a memory for all of us, sir. Can you all put on your videos, please? Pramod ji, agar aap hai to, Manish ji, Ajay Gupta ji, and of course we have all our guests. Harshul ji, are we ready for a group snap? I'm sure you would have received the mailers and calls from Harshilji. He's somebody who always works at the back, but somebody who's made all this possible. He's a software professional. Monday to Friday, it's the weekends that he puts in his and burns the midnight oil to make all this Gyansabha really happen. And I thank the entire support that we have received from Nuclear Thermal Power Corporation of India, Western Region. सर हम आपके साथ ऐसे ही अच्छा काम करना चाहेंगे फ्यूचर में भी. बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद विजिलेंस अवेयरनेस सेलिब्रेशंस के लिए हमें प्रोत्साहित करने के लिए, जिसके कारण हम एक छोटी सी पहल इस दिशा में ले पाए. हम अगले आई थिंक आर वी रेडी? अर्शुल जी, हैव यू टेकन द स्नैप? Thank you so much. We look forward for another Gyansabha, right, 4:30 next Sunday. Before that, we conclude with Shanti Path. And one small announcement that All World Gayatri Parivar has this initiative of collective prayers from 6:20 to 6:30. आप जहाँ कहीं भी हैं 10 मिनट आंखें बंद कर लीजिए और उस ऊपर वाले से प्रार्थना कीजिए कि हमारे पूरा विश्व इस पैंडेमिक से जल्द बाहर आ जाए. आई थिंक आप लोगों ने एक बहुत अच्छी बात कही कि उस कॉमन मैन का क्या, उसकी तकलीफें क्या. तो हम ईश्वर से प्रार्थना करते हैं कि सबका कल्याण हो और शांति पाठ से आज की ज्ञान सभा का समापन करते हैं. ओ
ॐ देव शान्तिरन्तरिक्षगुं शान्ति पृथिवी शान्तिरापः शान्तिरोषधयः शान्ति वनस्पतयः शान्तिर्विश्वे देवा शान्तिर्ब्रह्म शान्ति सर्वगुं शान्ति शान्तिरेव शान्ति सामा शान्तिरेधि. ॐ शान्ति 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 सर्वारिष्ट सुशान्तिर्भवतु. Thank you everyone once again. Have a good day.
Okay. How do we go? You switch off or we go?